This is one of the craziest flights I've ever seen from a disc. But this video is not about that disc, at least not entirely. It's about this one, but I don't know what this disc is for. See, I got an email last week from Trash Panda that was pretty cryptic. It was just a document with lots of redacted text and a small diagram on it that shows the outline of a disc. Now, this isn't too crazy. Trash Panda has some great marketing. This was probably just something to try and build up some hype and get people excited about an upcoming release. But beyond marketing hype, there was something that immediately stood out about this disc. It is asymmetrical. The rim is clearly smaller on one side and gradually gets larger on the other. And there's only one disc that comes to mind when I see a design like that: the Aerobie Epic. Now take one look at the Aerobie Epic and you probably think to yourself, there is no way that that's PDGA approved. But it is. It was approved back in 2003, around the same time the PDGA was signing off on lots of bizarre designs like the Turbo Putt or the Ching Juju. And as soon as I saw the similarity to the Epic, I sent a picture to someone from our local community, Brent. Anyone that's played with Brent knows him for one thing: his thumbers with the Aerobie Epic. Now, I've known about the Epic for a while, and I also knew that Brent threw it, but I didn't know why until a couple days ago. It turns out Brent doesn't throw backhand. Instead, he uses the Epic on a high thumber that quickly flips over and amazingly holds a slow, smooth fade to the left, basically creating his version of a backhand flight. Now, I'll be the first to admit, maybe I'm late to the party here, but that Epic flight is crazy. But here's the thing. The Epic has been out of production for years now, and to get one in halfway decent condition is going to cost you no less than $50. So naturally, when I showed Brent a picture of this disc that looks a bit like the Epic, he immediately wanted to know more and wanted to throw it. And I don't blame him. Imagine if you're somebody that's been relying on an out of production disc that costs $50 a piece, how attractive a new version would be that's in premium plastic, that's probably going to run about $20, that you can actually get a hold of. So let's find out if this disc can follow in the footsteps of the Aerobie Epic. This disc, by the way, is the Extraterrestrial 2. Why is it called the Extraterrestrial? I don't know. Why is there a 2? I don't know that either. I'm sure Jesse from Trash Panda will have a very well produced video on their channel explaining both of these things, but until then, we'll focus on what we do know. For example, we do know that it's PDGA approved as of July 25th, just about a week ago when they first sent out that email. We also know that it's made of 100% recycled plastic, just like other Trash Panda discs, but it's not like other Trash Panda discs. While the dune and inner core come in a very slick, recycled blend, this feels completely different, and there's a good reason for that. This disc is made in partnership with Gateway. Based on the manufacturing markings and Sharpied weight, I'd say it's actually made by Gateway at their facility. So perhaps Trash Panda is just supplying the recycled plastic itself. Again, I'm sure Jesse will tell us more about that. We also know that the rim width varies on the Extraterrestrial 2 between 17 millimeters at the narrowest point to 24 millimeters at the widest point. I'm not entirely sure what the purpose of that is yet, but I'll share some ideas on that after we see it fly. Now, that 7mm difference in rim width is nothing compared to the Aerobie Epic, which at its narrowest is 26 millimeters, which is 1.5 millimeters wider than MVP's biggest 14.5 speed discs, and at its widest, it's a whopping 41 millimeters, or a full 1.6 inches, which is 15 millimeters thicker than the other side. For reference, your average 12-speed disc is usually around 24 millimeters wide on the rim, while 7 speeds come in around 17. So based on all that, we do know that the ET2, which I've decided to call it for short since I'm already tired of saying extraterrestrial all the way through, is a 7-speed to 12-speed driver, depending on where you hold it. I don't know, should we average those speeds and call it a 9.5? I don't know. And that's interesting because what usually determines whether a disc feels good in your hand or not is how wide the rim is. So whether you prefer a narrow rim, a wide rim, or anything in between, you can probably find a place on this disc that feels good to you. But this raises another question. Does the disc fly differently depending on where you grip it? So far as we can tell, no. Here's Caleb gripping the narrower side of the rim, He lets it rip and it holds straight for about 2/3 of the flight before a big aggressive fade. While here, he's gripping the thicker side of the rim and gets a near identical flight. We also know that this disc doesn't really fly like a normal disc. Take a close look. While some of Caleb's throws have a little off-axis torque wobbling up and down, the ET2 is sort of shaking, shimmying. I'm not sure what to call it. I threw it on a forehand, and I think I did a good job of describing what it looks like just with the movement of my hands here. It's basically wiggling back and forth as it flies. And that is, of course, because it's asymmetrical. There is more weight on one side of the disc than there is on the other. When you spin most discs on your finger, it's easy to keep them going because you can find that balance point right on the nub in the middle. But with the Extraterrestrial 2, it's really difficult because the center where the nub is not the center of mass. If you try to hold the ET2 right in the center, it leans over to one side. Whereas if you hold it slightly off center, you get a nice balanced disc. But I think at this point, we've probably learned all that we can without just giving this some throws. So let's take a look at the Extraterrestrial 2 on the course. Let's begin with Caleb at our usual spot and with some backhand throws. On a flat release, Caleb was able to get a nice long straight flight again before another big fade. On a slight hyzer with a lot more power, Caleb was able to get it to turn, but it did have plenty of stability to fight back at low speed. So on backhand, it definitely has enough stability to kick in and fight out, but what about on a forehand? Well, it's mixed results. While both Brent and myself found it overstable, it was inconsistent for Caleb. One throw started to turn and never looked back, while the other was super beefy. But what we really want to know is if it can do anything like the thumbers on the Epic. Now remember, this is what the Epic can do in the right hands and in the right conditions. On a thumber, it gets a quick flip, but then it pushes out, forward, and slowly fades left. So can the Extraterrestrial 2 do anything different? No. The ET2 here flies like most overstable discs on a thumber. The distance comes from how long it takes to flip over. Otherwise, it just drops straight down. However, the Epic isn't perfect. While we showed you the ideal flight, let's take a look at it in a tailwind. Here, it drops like a rock and never has an opportunity to fade left. While in a headwind, it can easily overturn, push right, catch edge, and roll. One thing we did learn though is that it's too bad Brent doesn't have a backhand, because he might like the Epic on backhand as well. So where does this all leave us with the Extraterrestrial 2? Well, I'm no big fan of flight numbers, but they haven't published any for it yet, so I think I'd like to take a crack at assigning it some myself. So here goes. We'll give it a 7 to 12 speed. Let's average that to 9.5, I guess, with 4 glide, 0 turn, and 3 fade. At least that's how it flew for us. So what are your thoughts on the Extraterrestrial 2? Do you think that it might be useful? Do you think there's some use that we didn't find for it? Leave a comment down below. And also comment below what discs or topics we should explore next. For Brent, Caleb, and Six Sided Discs, I'm Greg. We'll see you in the next one. Last year we went to the Disc Golf Pro Tour for the first time and set up our pop-up shop in the vendor area at the LWS Open at Idlewild. This August, we're coming back, and this time we're more prepared. If you're one of the first 100 people to come up to our tent and say hello and show us that you're subscribed to our YouTube channel, you will receive one of these, our Six Sided Discs Velcro patch for free. And I want to say a big shout out and thanks to discgolfpins.com for making these for us. They turned out fantastic. So if you're ever in need of a pin or patch or anything else about disc golf, head over to discgolfpins.com. Not a sponsor. And of course, we'll see you at Idlewild.
Like wobbling? It looked like it at the beginning.
Didn't it?
Yeah.
That was weird.
It's actually about this disc, but I don't.
Go through.
It just turns over so quickly. It doesn't make sense.
How does he get 350 out of that?
I think well, firstly, we have a tailwind.
And as soon as I saw the similarity to the Epic's design, I reached out to
Maybe this can be your headwind, Epic.
Get it higher. Yeah, do it higher, that thing's working. And that's what happens. They're going right
Watch
to
your-
it. 4!
Watch your ankles.
Isn't that crazy?
But this video is not about that disc. It's actually, no.
And I have no idea why it's a 2. I just know
Our
that
first one?
I don't know.
But what we really want to know is if it can achieve the incredible. So where does that all leave us? No.
Oh my. It actually gets out of it a lot quicker than you think.
It's gone.
Look out.
If you like this content and want to see more, please consider liking the video, subscribing to our channel, or supporting us on Patreon. Your support makes this content possible.